Welcome to the Big MJ Debate. I'm Pez Jax, and I'm joined once again by the host of the O9 Chat 9 podcast, Sean McLachlan, and MJ Chart Data curator, Ilya Mazzani. Today, we are discussing something very familiar to me, Kingvention. So I'm going to hand over to my two great friends who are going to take it from here.
Back in September 2015, Kingvention, the first Michael Jackson European convention, took place for the very first time. 7 years later, in 2022, the fifth Kingvention took place just a couple of weeks ago. The event bigger and better than ever, hosting over 400 fans. It might be surprising to some that other than the volunteers to help set up and run the event on the actual day, there are actually only two people behind the event itself, Sebastian Mill and our very own Pez Jax. We're just going to have a wee chat with Pez to talk about Kingvention, how it was born, and what it's grown into. So if you don't mind, Pez, ready?
Yes, and I think it's probably worth saying, just for ego purposes, you guys wanted to do this episode, right? I had another episode lined up.
Pez is so uncomfortable with any sort of chat, even not even just praise, like just talk about this. So we kind of want to give credit where credit's due.
No, but it's always Pez that interviews people, and we never actually get Pez's story. So let's go.
Okay. So Pez, my first question for you is, how would you describe Kingvention to a fan who has never attended before?
Oh, good question. I would say that's a really tough question, because for me, I think Kingvention is, each person takes away from the event their own experience. So for me, I would hope, what I would say to another fan is, Kingvention is a place where you can meet other fans, where you can indulge your passion for Michael, and where you can come away, I hope, with memories that are going to last forever.
Well, we can attest to that. We're attendees, we can say that that's true. So, taking it all the way back to 2015, Kingvention had over 250 fans attend to celebrate the 20th anniversary of history. The guest speakers that year were Rob Hoffman, Diana Walczak, Jonathan Marish, and Eddie Wolf. So, starting at the beginning, even before this, how was the idea of Kingvention born, and how did you bring it to life?
So we'd always done these kind of little events. We did a pop shop of official Michael Jackson merchandise when I managed to get hold of a load of it from Bravado. And then in 2013, we also did another pop shop with a gallery feature with one of Michael's photographers. And then we kind of was like, okay, we've done some events. What we're going to do next? Then Escape came out, and we did all the Escape promo stuff that I'm sure people have seen. And then sort of 2015 came around, and at the time we were working with one of Michael's collaborators on an interview for Iconic magazine, and they'd mentioned to me about, I'm thinking of maybe coming to Europe sometime. And I was like, oh, great. Well, if you do, maybe we can host you here and get you in a room and get some fans together and they can chat to you. And that's basically where it came from. And I remember walking in Clapham Common Park on the phone on my lunch break, and I was just chatting with a friend, and I was like, this could be a big thing. This could be like a convention almost, like with a cinema screening, and they were like, oh, here you go again. And I was like, it could be like a big type of event. And my friend was like, oh, like a King of Pop convention. And I just went, yeah, or Kingvention or something like that. And then I sort of came home and said to Seb, hey, I've been chatting and had this idea. And he was like, oh, I've always wanted to do something like that. Why don't we see if we can make it happen? And then it really just snowballed from there. I think we spent 2 weeks, and we must have visited about 25 different venues. And at first, I was kind of wandering around. I had my folder, and I was making notes like, oh, yes, I could see, the gallery here and the interview there. And sort of by venue number 15, I was just getting really pissed off. And I was like, no, it's not going to work here. And they're like, oh, let us just show you. I was like, no, I don't like it. It's not going to work. So, and then obviously we found Park Plaza in Victoria. And the minute I walked in, I was like, this is the space. This is where it's going to happen.
So I feel like this question is going to kind of gloss over the whole thing, but obviously the first event was a huge success, the first Kingvention. Did you know that it was going to be as well received by the fans as it was?
No, so I'd actually said when we started working on it, and obviously Sebastian does all the logistics for it. He is the mastermind behind all of the logistics, all the venue sorting. And when we were kind of working out tickets and seating, and I said, oh, you know, maybe set up like seating for 60 people. I said, that's at a push. So I don't think we'll get more than 60. And then, of course, it got to sort of, 200. And then I think it got to 250 in the end.
So then in 2016, Kingvention celebrated Dangerous 25. That year, the guest speakers were Dan Beck, Yuko Sumida Jackson, Tom Russo, and Jonathan Marish was welcomed back for a second time. With the event returning for a second year, how long did it take you and the team to decide to do it again, and what made you want to?
So after the event, the first year, we were kind of like, right, well, that's done, and it was meant to be a one-off. And then a week later, we met up as a team. It was only a small group of us. We met up as a team, and we went to a Wetherspoons in Soho because we keep it classy. And we got quite drunk. And I can't remember who came up with it. It might have been me. It was like, should we do another one? And I was like, yeah, let's do another one. And again, somebody, I'm pretty sure it was me, was like, I'm going to announce it on social media now. And so I just tapped in like, another Kingvention next year. And that was how we committed to the second one.
No. I'm sorry, but I remember that moment and seeing that on Facebook. I was screaming. I was so happy.
See, I'm just out here sitting quiet, and that's because I've missed first two, and that is my biggest regret, because my mindset was, I lived in Bournemouth, I didn't live in London back then, and I thought, I don't want to go by myself. But that is such a wrong thing to think about Kingvention, because you go there and you have this 400 fans in there, and you just instantly click with everybody, and it's just incredible. So yeah,
and that's the thing, like this year in particular, we noticed that we had more solo attendees than ever before. So what it shows is that more fans are kind of saying, do you know what? I am going to go. And I really hope, I mean, obviously it's too soon to say, I really haven't done much digging around online, but I really hope that people have made friendships and connections that will last forever. I mean, look at us lot. We all met through Kingvention, funnily enough. And so, and I hold you as my closest and dearest friends. As part of a group, there are a couple of others that aren't with us at the moment. But, I can't imagine life without you guys now. We all met at the event.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. And I think even what you said about people, it's not just us who have made long-lasting friendships through this. So we'll maybe touch on that a bit later on. But just with the event returning again, did you really feel a pressure to kind of amplify it up and like make it bigger?
So this year, or just the year after the second one?
The year after.
Year after. So yeah, so obviously we'd had the Dangerous mural where we had the album as a cutout. And Seb worked really hard with a print company on that to get all the aspects of that right and have the little pop-ups out the front, which I actually found out when the National Portrait Gallery did on the wall in London. They took the idea from us. Some of the team that were behind there, I went to the press day and they said, oh yes, we'd seen this cutout of the Dangerous album at a fan event and we wanted to do the same. And I was like, oh, that was mine. So I was like, you're welcome.
Wasn't so credit due a little bit?
Well, it was quite good because they'd quoted us on something else in the back of the official book for that event. So MJ Vibe got a mention. So I was quite happy.
Okay, perfect. I didn't know
at least somewhere. So yeah, we'd done the second event and then the third event, and I said, oh, why don't we cover the whole wall with a mural? And Seb was like, no, this is not going to happen. We can't cover this whole wall. I was like, yes, we can. So we covered the whole wall with a mural. And it took 17 of us to lift it. We had a dance troupe that year, and they were there in rehearsal the night before, and they all had to sort of help us lift this mural onto the wall. Because my thought was like, when you come down that staircase at the previous venue, you get that, you want that first impression that you're like, I'm here. And I needed that to be big. And so, when we kind of did the third year at Park Plaza, and then we'd done that massive mural, I just was like, there's nowhere else we can go. I feel like I've done everything I can do in this space. Like, unless I wanted to like build stuff, and so it was like, you can't build stuff in this room. So we realized we kind of like the pressure to evolve was like heightened again after the third one.
So was that really the reason that you moved to a new venue?
So when we'd kind of reached our limit at Park Plaza, I was like, right, okay, well, what do we do now? And Seb was like, well, let's go and try Shaw Theatre and Pullman again and see if we can make it work there. And when we sort of, I remember that day, it was like, we kind of said, yes, let's do it here. And then it was 2018. And then we said, okay, we're not ready for this. Like, we've done 2017 and we just weren't ready in 2018. So we put out a statement and said, look, the event's not going to happen this year. We're just not ready. And then, of course, when we hit early 2019 and the news of, said TV film came out, and we both just sort of looked at each other and went, it has to happen this year. It has to happen. And then the move was complete and we were at the Pullman.
So that actually what I was going to, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the TV documentary, but obviously given the events in 2019, I'm sure like all fans remember that it was a difficult time. Do you think the events of that year impacted on the event?
Yeah, I mean, initially, the first thing that we had to do when we knew that was coming, when we'd been in discussions with the Pullman for this year, we had to check with them, and say, obviously there's a lot of press at the moment, and we just want to check that you're okay for us to still go ahead. And they were like, yep, can't wait to have you. So we're like, great. We did have a couple of people lined up to sponsor the event, one of which was going to, sponsor quite well and then pulled out. So then we had to set up a crowdfunder, which we did. And we said to the fans, look, we want to deliver this event this year, but we need your help. And, they really came through. In 2019, the fans really came through to help us make that event something special. And it was so important to have it. And I think there was an added sense of, obviously there's always this pressure to make it bigger and better, but in 2019 there was an added sense of, an importance in the fans being able to be together and to, make a statement and, share information. And I think that was really important that year.
I think the atmosphere that year was particularly amazing. Always remember I'm sure we've got the video, but it's the moment where the Michael picture comes up in the Innocent.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You're so damn disrespectable.
That video still gives me chills.
It's so funny because when I first made that video and I was going to have a different ending, and then I said, oh, let me put that in. And then I took it out. And then I think I showed you guys in a Starbucks or a Pret a Manger a rough edit of what I'd done. And you were like, no, keep it in. And I remember, because obviously the screen on the stage is a back projection. So if I'm backstage, I can see everything on the screen, but in reverse. So I can see what you're seeing. And I remember being the other side of the screen and seeing that come up and just hearing the noise in the theatre was just mad. It was like, I think everyone at that moment was kind of like, yes, this is where I'm meant to be right now.
I mean, we've seen it, right? I knew what was coming up, but when that picture came up, I don't know. I was just there trying to stop people from filming, obviously. Whole venue erupted, including myself. I was screaming my lungs out. And I don't think the cameras around that was recording picked up how loud it was in there. Like, it was incredible. It's one of the best moments at convention.
That literally was like one of my favourite moments. I've been to every convention, and that was one of my favourite moments.
Can't relate.
So then came 2020 and 2021, which shouldn't even have to obviously say that then there was coronavirus pandemic. But then we did, however, have KV Global.
Yes.
Which is still available to watch, guys, on YouTube. So if you've not
link below. I think someone will put it back.
Watch it from the comfort of your own home. Which brings us up to present day. So now we have
wait. Before we move on, we had Burn Does Disco Out happening.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Of course we did.
Even I forgot.
How could we forget that? Come on.
Yeah, that
was a part of Kingvention. May I just say, this is a part of Kingvention. This is an after party where we have a DJ and we get drunk. I mean, I personally get really drunk.
I think most people do. I mean, honestly, it's like watching Thriller, watching everybody kind of stagger out the room at the and be carried out
at the end of the day. Yeah, so my question here is, are we ever going to get Burn Does Disco Out as a standalone event?
Again? Well,
Yes.
I mean, that kind of came about because initially it was 2021 we did it.
Mm-hmm.
Seb and I went for lunch in Crystal Palace. We were going to sit in the park and we bought like some random cheese and some vegetarian ham. For those of you that don't know, we have vegetarian ham. And we were sitting on the floor in the park and Seb was like, it just really annoys me that everything happens in Vegas on Michael's birthday, like everything major, and we just get nothing here. And I was like, well, we could throw a party, but we've got 3 or 4 weeks. I don't even know if we get enough people. It might have even been 5 weeks. I want to say 5 weeks. And so by the time we'd walked home from the park, we'd settled on a name and a date, and we were like, let's just throw out a landing page and see what happens. And it just was born out of nowhere. And it was, went really well. So would it happen again? Ideally, what I wanted to do was to kind of run the two in the same year. So initially this year, Kingvention was meant to be in May. So the original plan was that Kingvention would happen in May and then Burn This Disco Out would happen later in the year.
Oh.
Obviously, if you remember at the end of last year, the government announced like, we're going back into a like tiered system, or there was something.
Restrictions.
And and I phoned the venue and said, look, we're not going to be ready for May because if certain people can't fly over, if fans can't get here, it's just not going to be fair. I want it to be where everything's lifted and everyone can come if they choose to.
Yeah, of course.
So it stole the day, basically.
That's what I get.
Kingvention for all time made its return in 2022 for the 5th year. So we celebrated 40 years of Thriller with Bill Betrayal, Kevin Dorsey, and Lavelle Smith Jr. So being away for 3 years at this point, how stressful did you find it to create the event?
From a level of 0 to stress, this was stress amplified. I think we just hadn't done it for 3 years, and don't get me wrong, like it was really exciting, and I think it was kind of nice that the theme was staring us in the face because it's 40 years of Thriller, so we couldn't go maybe we should do like a celebration of Destiny out because it's 40 years of Thriller. But there was a lot of things that had changed in the last 3 years. A lot of things we wanted to change. A lot of change in personnel. And I think all of those things kind of added to this new approach that we had to it. But I think it came off really well.
Oh, it was perfect. How long would you say that it actually did take to pull every element of this year's Kingvention together? Like, did you start in 2019?
I'd done bits and pieces, and then usually what happens is I make something and I'm like, yeah, that's really good, and then it gets close to the event, I'm like, no, that's really crap, and so I end up doing it again, and that happens all the time. So it's like, I think even this year, it was maybe a week before the event, and I was like, I'm changing the cover of the program. I don't like it. So it gets like that.
But
um,
I do want to point out that this is not your job. Like, it's not your full-time job. Like, this is
oh,
your
no, no,
own
no.
time you're putting into this.
But it takes a long time, I think, because the constant need to find new ways to engage people is important. And to do things that haven't been done before. And this year, I really wanted the 3D gallery to happen, which I can tell you all about the disaster we had 2 days before the event. But, this is something that had never been done for a music artist to have a 3D gallery in this way. And I was like, Michael has to be the first, and we have to make it happen. So, putting that together was really important. And then there was various other aspects, like what do we do for a mural? How do we make it work? So I would say that despite the fact we worked on it for at least a year, everything kind of this year really came together in the last 4 or 5 weeks.
That's
One
incredible.
thing about you and Seb, though, use are doers. You make it happen.
We are, and that's the thing. I think we balance each other out. In things where I get stressed, Seb is really calm, and in places where Seb gets really stressed, I'm really calm.
So for the first time this year, Kingvention ran over 3 days. So we had a dance masterclass with Lavelle on Friday, Kingvention, the main event, on Saturday, and then we also had a Sunday for the first time. How did you decide to go from one day to 3?
Well, having Lavelle was kind of a no-brainer that there should be a dance class, because obviously in 2017 we had Eddie Garcia, and he did a Thriller masterclass, which was, I think, the first event of ours that Ilya actually came to.
Yes, that was. I'm sorry.
I never forget a face.
That's when I first met you, Ilya.
Yeah, and I remember saying to you at the dance class, "Are you coming tomorrow?" And you said, "No, I haven't got a ticket." And I was like, "Listen, come, we'll sort it out on the door." And you never showed.
Listen,
that's not like
was,
you.
There was
2 days in a row. Yes, it is.
On behind, we don't want to go into details, but yes, I do regret not coming.
So 3 days. So we obviously had Lavelle, so it made sense to have a dance class, and he was really up for it. And then we'd set the guest this year, and then Al Scanlon reached out to me and said, I'd love to be a guest at Kingvention this year. And I said, oh, well, we've already kind of set this year. So I kind of went away and I spoke to Seb, and I did some numbers and I did some working out, and I was like, what about if we had a second day? And I kind of floated it, and Seb just sort of looked at me and was like, so I just sort of left it there. And then the next day, on my lunch break, I actually went to a pub and I sat with my laptop, and I was like, this is what a Sunday could look like. This is what the schedule could be. And then I kind of came back and said, so about that Sunday, I've mapped out what it might look like. What do you think? And Seb was like, yeah, actually, you're onto something. Like this could be good. And I was like, really? So that was kind of how the Sunday came about. And we were really apprehensive about doing 3 days. We're like, is this going to work? Are people going to want an entire weekend of this? And it turns out they did.
Well, people would want a whole week of it. Don't worry about anyone wanting.
Except me. I couldn't cope with a whole week at that level.
You just tell us where to turn up. We'll be there.
How do you feel that this year's event differed from other years?
Oh, there was a lot more challenges this year. I think from the feedback I've had so far, and from the front of house, I'm pleased to say that everybody seemed to have a great time and things ran smoothly. I'd love to say it was the same behind the curtain, but it definitely wasn't.
I think it's got to the point where it's got bigger, and this is the biggest one you've done so far. So I think it's catching up on you back. You got this. You did great. You did amazing.
I think I need a moment to cry and then pick it up.
You did look like you were gonna at some point. Yeah.
Every time that I think it can't get bigger, though, it does.
No.
Because after that 2019 mural, I thought, how are they going to top this one? And then everything got topped.
Yeah, yeah. The mural this year, I loved it so much. And when we must have gone there like 2 weeks before the event, and we still hadn't got a structure of how it was going to stand up. And I wanted this big like metal frame and stuff, and Seb was like, "This is going to cost too much. We can't afford this." And then I was like, "Look, I can come up with this idea." And then Seb was like, "Why don't we make it almost like so that it slots around the window?" And then when the pieces were delivered, the guy who, a great friend of ours called Sam, came to actually help us have a look at it. It was like, "What do you need me to do?" So we were like getting all the pieces out, and I was like, "Oh shit, this is probably bigger than I anticipated." And he was like, "Should we just put it up now?" And we put it up on Friday night, and the three, me, Seb, and Sam, did it in about 2 hours with Al Scanlon supervising.
Oh, God.
Like that there was two elements to it. So we had obviously Michael, and then we had the Palace Theatre.
Yeah, the Palace Theatre was great. I was so pleased with how that turned out. I drew that from some reference photos online. I really wanted to have this kind of like moment where you like enter through the Palace Theatre doors or come out of them like Michael does in the short film. And so I drew that, and that took me a couple of weeks to do. And every time I was like, okay, this will do. This looks fine. Then I'd reopen it and I'd go, no, you need to do this bit again. It doesn't look right. So it took a while, but I got there in the end.
So which element of this year's convention would you say you get the most like personal enjoyment out of?
I think it's just, I don't know, when I get to kind of wander around and see different people engaging with different parts and taking photos and stuff, that just makes me feel great. It really does. When like we do when Hill of the World comes on in the party in the evening and everybody joins hands and forms a massive circle around the venue, that's just the best feeling ever. And we've got people there from all over the world, of all ages, of all abilities. And everybody's just together. And that is the bit I love the most. I think just seeing everybody kind of coming together. And just seeing people be able to celebrate their fandom. I know it sounds really like shitty and cheesy to be like, oh, everyone, but that is actually how I feel. The best sense of kind of accomplishment is seeing that people are having a great time. So for me, it's probably that.
From our perspective, attending as fans, it's not. I don't think it's easy to say it though, because I think a lot of the time, and this isn't to be like, oh, poor us, but growing up, especially as a Michael fan, can be really lonely. And you do a lot of the time feel like just no one gets it. And to be in a room full of 400 people and they all just get it, it is the most amazing atmosphere.
Charlotte, let's reverse that question, because you're the one that sits in the audience. What is your favorite part of it? What was your favorite part?
Do you know, right, this is a really niche thing to say, but see when everyone just walks into the theatre and you sit down and you're like, oh my God, I know that my mind is going to be blown by the time I walk out of here. I feel like that is just the most amazing feeling. And obviously, you see a lot of people that you've only known online, which is so amazing. But for me, my personal favourite is always going to be the after party. Like, best party in the world.
Do you know what? I get it. And I get why everyone loves the party, and I love the party as well. But a lot of people say that's my favourite part. That's the part I have to do the least for. Like, I literally just have to put on music in a room, hire a DJ, and people go, that's the best part. And I'm like, I've just done a whole other event. And you're like, this is bad. I'm joking. I get why, because it's the atmosphere more than anything else.
Well, for this year specifically, though, I will say, like, before the party, my favourite element was the 3D gallery. I've never seen anything like that in my life. And obviously, I know how much work went into it. But it was
that gallery.
The way that everyone was walking in and just going, wow, it needs to come back for any future event. It has to come back.
No, what blew my mind was you having, obviously, that massive screen with 3 images were incredible, which you edited because they're not actually 3D. But you having the "This Is It" backdrops there and witnessing that there for the first time blew my mind, because I never imagined how much it actually worked. When the thrill in Thriller, when they're like pointing their swords and guns and they're shooting, and it's just incredible. And that 3D has to come.
Obviously, you get to sit and interview the special guests. Is that something that you find nerve-wracking? Do you come up with the questions beforehand, or do you just kind of freestyle it when you're on the stage?
But once I'm in the flow, I'm fine. But I just sort of get really nervous because, believe it or not, and this is the funny thing. Like, a lot of people think that, you know, I have an ego and I love myself and all this sort of stuff, but I really don't like being in front of the camera. This is why all the stuff I do for my day job, you'll never see me in front of the camera, because I refuse to do it. But, you know, at the same time, there's so many questions I want to know the answer to with the interviews. I'm like, well, I'm going to have to do them because I want to know the answer. But in answer to your question, you know, I kind of have a lot of chats with the special guests in advance. I ask them if anything is off limits, you know, if there's anything they don't want to talk about, if there's anything they specifically want to talk about. And I always try to do it chronologically. Because I think, you know, as fans, we always look at Michael's career and life chronologically, like, oh, I'm a Dangerous fan, I'm a History fan, you know, we know dates, we know times, we know moments. So if I was to kind of like start interviewing someone and talk about Dangerous and then go to Off the Wall and then go to Invincible and then go back to that, people would be like, I'm all over the place. And I think the interview flows better when it kind of like goes through their kind of timeline with Michael. So I try and do that. Obviously, we can divert depending on you know, what responses I get from some of the questions, or if some people are more hyper than others.
Just on the topic of you having an ego and some of the things that people do say online, something that is banded about a lot on Twitter is that Kingvention is a way for you to profit off of Michael and the fans. Just to set the record straight, how much profit is actually made from Kingvention?
So I also address this
before
on the...
you answer, Pez, can I just
Yeah.
Firstly, the amount of work Pez and Seb put into this, they deserve all the money they can get, because I mean, they don't, but they deserve it. So I don't know. It's like asking someone to go and work for free, give your time, your personal time for free, and which is never going to happen. Nobody would do that. I wouldn't go and work for someone for free. So why should
you wouldn't even work for money?
You wouldn't turn up on time, that's for sure.
How do I get back to this?
You literally wander straight into it.
I just don't understand the entitlement of MJ fans saying, well, they're doing it because they're making money. They should, because they're putting their sweat and tears and blood into this. So anyway, yeah, I'll let you carry on.
Well, yeah, so I was going to say, I mentioned this on the MJ cast when I spoke with them a couple of years back, that, you know, it kind of, with this question, it doesn't matter what I say, because people decide for themselves anyway. And that's the unfortunate thing, that I'll tell the truth and I'll tell it as it is. And people go, oh, yeah, you know, that's not true. And so I realize I'll say it again, but I realize that not everybody will accept that. And I'm at the stage where, well, if you don't accept that, I can't do anything about that. You know, that is what it is. So we don't make money from Kingvention. We actually make a loss. Many years in the past, we've made a loss. I don't know what this year's looking like yet, because we haven't officially closed the budget, but, you know, there's never even really been a year that we've broken even. And Seb and I put a lot of our own money into it as well to make up the difference. I think the thing is, you know, Kingvention could break even if I scaled back on a lot of the ideas and a lot of the banners that we have and a lot of the artwork and parts of the event. And I don't want to do that, because the mission of Kingvention is to create an event that is good enough that if Michael was alive, he could come to it. and not feel like he's going to some backwater village hall or some, theatre, community theatre in the sticks. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not Michael Jackson level. And I want this event to be Michael Jackson level. He's an A-list, the biggest selling artist on the planet, and this event has to reflect that. And I don't want to settle for any less than that. And so, yeah, that means that we throw a hell of a lot of personal money at it, and we come out with a loss every year. And then the way that we make up for those losses is to do things like, I wrote a book, and all the proceeds from the book, I didn't take a penny on the book. It all went into funding Kingvention. Seb does the same. He does a collector's book, and any money he makes from the book goes into funding Kingvention. Any money from King of Shop goes into funding Kingvention, and King of Shop is actually the biggest financier of Kingvention, because without King of Shop, the event just couldn't happen. But no, I mean, and I've said it before and I say it again, all of our accounts are public record because we are a registered company. We had to do that for legal purposes, and all our accounts are public record. So it's out there. Anyone that wants to be a nosy bitch can go find it. But if I was making a ton of money on it, why would I have a day job? Wouldn't I just make this my full-time job? Why would I also have a day job? Because I wouldn't need to have one. And trust me, I'd like to just do this for a living. It'd be amazing to just do Kingvention for a living. But yeah, I mean, I've said this time and time again, and people are still like, oh, you're making money off of it. And I'm like, well, if that's kind of what you think at this point, you're never going to change your mind on that.
I would just like to say, from a personal standpoint and as your friend, that seeing people say and make up these things regarding this whole event and you and Seb as people makes me so, bleep this if you want, fucking mad that I can't even begin to scratch the surface on how much work Pez and Seb put into this. So all of you people out there who make up these rumours that they profit and they do this and they do that, try it for yourselves. Try and run an event like this for yourselves, and then we'll see.
Pez, second you start making profit, bitch, you're putting me on a salary. I don't care.
Well, I think, another one of Michael's collaborators said to me once about time. And I'd never really thought about it like this. And again, this was something I mentioned on the MJ cast. They said to me, if I was to, this person works for themselves, and they said to me, if I was to charge my own business for the amount of time I spent on my own projects, there would be a deficit before we've even begun. And I thought, do you know what? That's a really, really good point. And I look at it in the same way. If I was to charge the business an hourly rate for the amount of hours I put in, there would be a huge deficit before the event even started, because, that's also my time. So, and that's Seb's time, and we give up our time and our evenings and our weekends after our day jobs to create this event, and we don't get paid for that. And I don't do it for the money. I've never done it for the money. Again, despite what people want to say, I've never done it for the money. I've done it purely because I get so much enjoyment out of spending time with other fans and doing this and seeing Michael celebrated as he should be, especially in spite of everything else and negative things that non-MJ fans say. We see it all the time. I think this is something I'll continue to do.
Moving on to a bit of a more lighter note, and a really actually happy note. A lot of people share their personal stories about how attending Kingvention, and myself included, has had a profound effect on their life. So how does it feel to know that you've helped people and made people so happy through something that you have created and brought to people?
I don't know. I mean, like that's humbling, and is.
I knew you were going to hate that. I knew you were going to hate that.
It's so
because it means a lot, and I'm not someone who is very vocal about my emotions or anything like that. So, I just hope that some of the events that I went to in the past, one's run by the late Gloria Haydock, who passed away last year. I remember going to my first MJ event. I remember walking in and I was 17. No, I must have been younger than that because I went with somebody from secondary school. So I must have been 16. I wasn't drinking. Yes, I was 16. And it was Music and Me in 2003. It was in Elephant and Castle, a place that's no longer there called the Coronet. And I remember walking in for the first time, and this was my first event. And one of the first things I remember seeing is the merchandise table, and there was all these official MJ dolls on the back wall. And that's why this year you'll see at Kingvention we had a whole wall of MJ dolls, because I was like, I need to replicate how I felt when I walked in. And when they set up the shop and they put one out and they said, oh, we've got the rest under the table, I was like, no, they've got to be in a line. But, you know, I remember those moments, and I remember how I felt, and I want other people to feel the way I felt when I went to these events. I remember going to Victory Party in 2005 after the verdict, and just how amazing it felt to dance with other fans for the first time. And so that's why with Kingvention, I wanted to elevate that and be like, but now you can meet people that worked with him as well. So yeah, I mean, it is a humbling experience, and I think sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes I forget that, just because obviously there's also a lot of drama that surrounds running Kingvention or an event like this, that sometimes I forget to take a moment and think, but actually some people have had, you know, an amazing time.
Rank all the guests best to worst.
Is this like that James Corden thing where you have to eat an animal part if you don't do it?
Oh, you just have to eat bull's cock or something.
Look, I'm going to cop out, and what I'm going to say is that the great thing about the guests, I think, is that each guest is good for a different fan. And what I mean by that is, if you ask fans on the day, who was your favorite? Everybody has a different favorite. And that's what I love, that it just shows how, you know, the diversity of fans and what they enjoy, and what is interesting to one will be boring to another, and what is funny to one will not be funny to another. And I love that, you know, and I think this year really I saw that a lot, that people had really different opinions of who was their favorite.
There's also been a lot of funny moments over the years. I feel like this year was definitely really funny. Do you have any like kind of particular things that stand out about funny moments like at Kingvention?
There's always those kind of random moments that just, especially for me, like take me off guard. I think this year Lavelle was just hilarious.
Always.
And he just, I think there was a couple of times I was like following my interview questions, and he just took me off guard so many times that I was like, I'm out. Like when I said to him, so I'd had a conversation with Lavelle, and I'm sure he won't mind me telling this, before Kingvention, and I said to him, oh, you know, why wasn't you in Ghosts? You choreographed it. Why weren't you a dancer in it? Oh, you were there, right?
I think he said this on the interview, because I remember him saying.
And Ilya, you were there as well, right?
Yeah, it's been good.
So he said, oh, you know, Michael basically told me you have a choice. If you want to elevate as a choreographer, you need to think about not being in front of the camera and being behind it. So you can either be the choreographer and take the credit for that, or you can be a dancer as part of the group, but you can't be both. So Lavelle was like, okay, I'll be choreographer then. So because I already knew the answer and I had put it in my question, so I asked it again on stage, and Lavelle just went, do you want to know why? Because I was fat. I was like, this isn't the answer I was expecting. So I was really kind of thrown off guard, and I was like, how do I follow it up without insulting somebody? I think, and also when he said this year that he'd slept with two people on one of the sets, and I was like, wait, what?
It's for everyone just was like, ah.
And I think probably another funny one was Saida the year before.
Oh yeah,
because Saida obviously, you know, has been doing this sort of thing for years. She's been doing a lot of interviews. So when I was able to ask her a question, she could give such a broad answer that I only sort of didn't really need to ask very much. I think probably is probably more cringe than funny is when I tried to justify a question I'd asked about. I said something like, how does it make you feel to know that your song Man in the Mirror has changed people's lives. It's played at their weddings, it's played at their funerals. People get married to that song. You know, they've had it played at their funerals. It's in a good way, but that's a good thing because that's a testament to their life to have that song, right?
Okay.
Arto.
God, I have never ever thought of that as a funeral song.
No, but you know, if you had to
Don't even try to clean that up.
And I went to go on and she was like, hang on a minute, funerals? Oh no. Like, so what I was trying to say basically was that when a song means so much to a person that it becomes the soundtrack to their life, they would want that at their funeral because it sums up who they feel they were as a person. Like, you know, you would pick songs that you feel fit you as a person. So that's what I was trying. But she just went off on one about like, I can't believe you're saying my songs at funerals. I was like, no, that's not what I'm trying to say. And she's like, no getting out of it now. And I was like, no way. So that was probably more of a cringe moment for me, or I kind of wanted the ground to swallow me up because
there's been so many moments, I think, with lots of the guests. Like, I remember when obviously we were talking about Cider, but I remember her talking about when Quincy, I can't remember if it was Quincy, put her on the phone to Michael. And she was like, on the phone, I was the hotel operator.
Yes, exactly. That is literally word on word correct.
Michael really wants you to bring home the message that... Hold on a minute, Sid. And then I hear... Then Quincy Jones puts Michael Jackson on the phone. I don't know about you, but when I was coming up, Michael was my husband. Oh, I had cousins. They had Jermaine and Randy and Tito and them. But Michael was my husband. So, in my mind, I'm on the phone with my husband, right? And the last thing I wanted to be was the geeked out fangirl. Oh my God, even though it was all in here. Oh my God, I love you, I love you, I love you so much, so much, so much. But baby, on the phone, I was a hotel operator. I said, how can I help you?
It's so funny. And Eddie Garcia, he always stands out as one of the funniest guests ever. Like, he was great.
Yeah, and what I loved about Eddie is that usually we give everybody water, and we have water on the stage, and I always say still or sparkling, you know, to make sure that we have their rider for what they want on stage. And Eddie was like, oh no, just Coca-Cola. And then Doria goes to me, you're going to give Eddie Garcia Coca-Cola, you know he's hyper, right?
Time zones, all that sort of thing. Dorian said the other day, Eddie still has the same energy, and it's tiring in a good way. How do you keep that energy going when you're flying all around the world? Caffeine. Lots of caffeine.
Okay. And Eddie's interview was great because Eddie didn't stay in his chair for more than 5 minutes before he was jumping up again and running across the stage. And I was sort of trying to keep track of it. Like, wait, where's he going? He was very funny.
Yeah. I think another good thing about Kingvention is it's kind of formed its own community. There's lots of different kind of friend groups now and all the things that come along with that.
Yes.
Does not feel great to kind of not be at the centre, but be the reason that these groups and a whole community is kind of formed?
Well, I would probably say that they've come together because of Michael, and it just so happens that we've put something on that helps, you know.
I don't think you're taking enough credit there.
but to be fair, it's true, right? So it's kind of like, you know, all we do is elevate someone's existing fandom. So that's kind of, we help, you know, the event helps bring like-minded people together to share in what they already love. And I think the communities that come from that are, and plus I love a bit of gossip, and I'm always kind of, because I don't get to get involved during the event, I'm always afterwards like, so who hooked up with who? You know, what happened here? There were two people together over there. There were two people arguing over there. And I'm like, I never get any of the gossip afterwards.
Oh, there's always some. The last time I was walking around taking pictures with everybody, every single person. I was scrolling through my camera roll the next morning, like, who's that? Who's that? Who's that? Well, yeah, it's always good to get a wee bit of gossip after the event. There's always events within themselves at that after party.
What I'm waiting for is the first Kingvention marriage and the first Kingvention baby, if it happens. Could you imagine?
Obviously, we've learned a lot of things that we wouldn't have otherwise learned if we never got to kind of spend the time and talk to the guests in the way that we do at the event. So what would you say is the funniest thing that you learned about Michael?
There's been so many funny moments, and I think that's what's so good about like having such a broad mix of guests, that they all come with their own stories, and some of them obviously have never been told before. A couple of the guests we've had, and I've said, you know, why have we never heard this? And they said, because no one's ever asked me. And I think that's great because you get to hear these really funny stories. I think one of my favorites is when Diana Walzak at the first convention did her interview, and she showed a photo that Michael had sent her back of the statue, and he'd written on it, "Thighs too fat." And, and she said, you know, well, who doesn't love slim thighs? And I just thought, that's so funny that, you know, just the way Michael has looked at this statue of himself, and the first thing that stuck out to him is like, them thighs are too fat. So I loved that. It made me laugh a lot because it just gave me an insight into how he thought. There was, let's see, probably more cute than funny was Dan Beck's answer machine message from Michael during the history era, when he phoned Dan to give him a pep talk, and Dan didn't answer because it was like 3 a.m., as Michael does. And yes. Michael left a voice message that was like, you know, hey, it's me. You know, congratulations on the baby. And then he says, you must be so fortunate. I hope this happens for me one day. And then he goes into a whole spiel about, don't let the press derail you. This album is going to be amazing. We're going to get #1 all over the world. Just keep on target, keep focused. You know, let's aim our highest heights. Together we can achieve. And then it goes quiet and it goes,
hey, I would love to see a picture of that baby. Bye, love
you, bye. It's so cute.
So cute.
They're kind of two that made me laugh. Maybe Tom Russo had quite a few of like Michael going off to McDonald's. But what I loved about Tom Russo is that he would kind of laugh at the joke before he got to the punch. So you're like, this has to be really funny by the time you get there, because otherwise you've just been laughing for nothing.
I think my favourite one from this year was when Al Scanlon was talking about Christmas at Neverland. And I think he had said it had been a long day and it was like 11 o'clock on Christmas Eve or something. And he picked up the phone and he was so tired and he went, what? And I was like, where can I get do you think I'd be able to get a Santa suit for tomorrow morning? And Al said, not even Michael Jackson can get a Santa suit at 11 o'clock on Christmas Eve. Went, okay, thank you.
I love that, as if he's like a guest on his own property. It's like calling, Okay, thank you for your help. Goodbye now. Click.
Again, I hate to touch on the negativity, but unfortunately, there are people online, where they always are, who don't like Michael, don't like Kingvention, and decide to kind of be quite mean and say horrible things about Michael and about the event. How does that impact you and make you feel?
I mean, usually if I see something spiteful or negative, or I know it's from a troll account, I block them straight away. I did get sent some stuff this year from a fan that was like, I saw this on Twitter. Is this true? And it was one of those ridiculous troll accounts that literally spends every minute of every day talking about Michael, thinking about Michael, writing about Michael, watching Michael fans, visiting Michael websites, probably saving Michael pictures. Like, they tweet about Michael more than I tweet about Michael. It's this weird obsession that they have, and they go, "Oh, you lot are fanatics and stans, but so are you."
Yeah.
The kind of spectrum of fandom ranges from fanatical in the good sense to fanatical in the bad sense. Someone sent me a tweet that was like, "Oh, Kingvention organizers are already discussing not doing next year or cancelling it altogether because of low ticket sales." Well, first and foremost, that's news to me, because Kingvention organizers are me and my husband. Secondly, there's no truth in that whatsoever. They tweeted that, I think it was around the time of Kingvention this year, and Seb and I don't even think about another event until we finish this one. Bearing in mind, when the event finishes, there's still all the after event stuff. There's all the paperwork to finish. There's all the accounts to do. There's all the people that need to be paid. There's all the photos and videos. So Kingvention doesn't just end when the doors close after the event. It goes on for a good couple of weeks afterwards. So why would we even think about what's next before we've even finished this one? Cancelling it altogether? Absolutely not. That's ridiculous. And they just made that up for the 3 or 4 likes that I hear they got.
That's not even an option, though.
No, exactly. But ultimately, does it bother me? No, not really, because it's like, you're just obsessed with us. Yeah. Why are you're looking at the Kingvention website, you're seeing how many tickets are sold, you're trolling the accounts to see what we're saying or who our guests are, you're tagging our guests in it, you're hashtagging. Like, really? Get a life.
They couldn't even get the ticket sale thing right, though.
So it was showing tickets that were left to purchase, not tickets that hadn't sold. So where they saw like 14 out of 70, they thought that was 14 sold, where it was actually 14 left. Also, it's worth mentioning, we sold out the Sunday completely, which was 150 seats, and it sold out completely. So, it's just like, get a life. Why are you trolling?
If they're watching, it really benefits us. So make sure you like and subscribe.
Yeah,
don't forget to share.
The point. But that's exactly the point. If you're watching, you're proving your obsession, because you're watching what we're talking about. Michael Jackson stuff, I need to watch it. For what benefit? You're just proving the point that you are obsessed with Michael Jackson and Michael Jackson fans and everything we do. We're just getting on with us. We're just running our events. We're just doing our stuff. But you're obsessed with us. You have nothing in your life that you're obsessed. And I think that's pretty pathetic, to be honest. Get a hobby.
I think sometimes they think they're being hurtful, and the things they say are actually comical. Like, I was reading through, I think it was the same account that said Pullman staff have their work cut out for them with fugly stands with 2 left feet and Michael Jackson tattoos.
Yeah, but here's the crack, right? MJ fans that come to Kingvention are unashamed of who they are. They're happy with who they are. They celebrate who they are. They have their tattoos. They wear their costumes. They wear their T-shirts. They're fine with who they are. This coming from an account that has no profile picture, no name, no location. So if you want to go around calling people fugly, let's see who you are. But oh no, you'd actually have to put out who you are and deal with the repercussions.
Also, on another sort of sadder note that I think some people don't really think about, is that not every fan who comes to Kingvention is respectful of the event and the work that goes into it. How does that make you feel, and how difficult is that to deal with from your perspective?
I think, it's probably worth mentioning that is a very, very small percentage of people, and the majority of people who come are always respectful to our guests and respectful of the rules and respectful of, you know, what goes on at the event. It makes it hard to trust people in a way. There's been a couple of instances where it's been hard to trust people. I think the biggest issue for me is filming. And so we made a decision this year. Usually we say no photos and no videos in the theatre. We lifted the ban on photos this year, which was great. And I've seen some really cool photos that were taken, you know, of the interviews on stage, and that's fantastic. The reason we say no videoing is because I've had it where we've interviewed people and come off stage and they've gone, I don't know if I should have said that. Or, oh, maybe I should have phrased that a bit differently. Or, oh, what I meant by that was actually this. Obviously, Kingvention, we film the whole event. We have a professional videographer who is amazing, I might add. Carolina is amazing, and she videos front of house. And then my friend Ewan films back of house. So we have professional footage anyway. And so I think that when people film and we ask them not to, that's just disrespectful. You know, we make it very clear, please don't film. And the guests are telling their story with you in the room. This is a moment for you to be in the room. It's not a concert. It's not like a concert where everyone's got their phone up and everybody's singing and dancing. It's a theatre setting. So imagine if everybody was just sat there on their phone like this. It would be weird.
Yeah.
So yeah, and every year it happens, you know, and we have to message people and say, could you please take the video down because it was a private space and you were asked not to film. I don't know why you would. Why wouldn't you just enjoy it while you're there? Like, use your ears and eyes and enjoy it while you're in the room.
Well, like, it's something that I can't get my head around. Is like, you've paid your money to go to this and you're getting access to something that not every fan has. And you're like, of course, you're paying for it, but you're very lucky to have access to an event where that's possible. So I don't understand why you kind of wouldn't respect the sort of, I hate to use the word sacred, but respect the sort of...
It is, though. It's supposed to be like us sitting in a room and it's very personal and it's like us three having friends having conversations and Charlotte randomly like filming the whole thing like secretly. It's weird.
Because we make a point of asking for people not to, when somebody does, that makes it worse in a way. You know, and then we do have areas where we say you can't film. We also have areas where you can't go, like backstage. And, you know, this year in particular, there were some fans that decided to wander backstage and film stuff, which is just totally not in the, you know, the realm of the event, and that shouldn't happen. And I think, you know, especially this year, we had a newer team. There was a lot of new people on our team this year. There was some people that didn't come back this year and will never come back again, which is
oh my god, it's me, guys.
It's not you. You're the king of the meet and greet. The way you handled that queue was amazing. It needed a new owner. It needed a new owner, and you took over that responsibility. Some people did sort of come up to me and reflect upon the changes that we had and some of the team members that we no longer had. And I think it's great. I think, you know, change is good, and people who don't want to be there anymore, then that's fine. People who aren't fans of Michael anymore, that aren't part of the team, that's also fine. You know, if you want to sell your stuff on eBay and move on, that's totally up to you. I'm just glad that fans at Kingvention got to benefit from some of the stuff you were selling on eBay because it was available in the shop.
And you can always swing on to eBay if you want.
Keep this in, don't cut it out.
So, Pez, obviously you've done Kingvention for, well, there's been 5 Kingventions, but you've been doing it for longer than that. Was there any other ideas that you had that never really worked out?
There's a lot of ideas that float about and things that I would love to. Oh yeah, there's a good one. So this was the second Kingvention where we were celebrating Dangerous 25. and we had a gospel choir that were going to sing Will You Be There. And obviously, as you know, on the tour, Michael he performs Will You Be There on Dangerous Tour, and then he has the lady come down from the ceiling dressed as the angel, and she gives him a big hug at the end. So I really wanted to have like an angel descend from the ceiling. And so I said to Seb, like, what we could do is we could have this angel cut. And he was just like, just stop. This is not a good idea. And I was like, oh, I really want to make this happen. So there was a member of our team, and she was the only girl on our team. And I thought, you know what? She could do it. So I looked into like finding a pulley system that we could wrench her up. Do you need a moment?
I'm so sad that never happened.
So we were going to wrench her up onto the ceiling, and then as the song obviously ends, we were going to slowly descend her down from the ceiling with her arms out. She was going to wrap her arms around the choir. However, logistics, the ceiling capacity to hold a certain volume, and the pulley system just all didn't come together. So
well, I'm sad that never happened, because I would have really enjoyed that.
you and me, but I think it would have been a video for the ages if that, if that had happened. But yeah, that was one of the probably more stupider ideas of mine that didn't happen.
What do you think was the most shocking thing that you learned?
Oh, there's been a lot of things. I think there's a lot of things I've learned as well. So like when I do the pre-interviews for Kingvention, a lot of the guests will say things and then go, but you can't tell anybody that can't go in our on-stage interview, which is really frustrating because there's some really juicy stuff which I would love to share, and I just can't. And I sort of go, okay, I promise I won't, and then I can't. I'm like, why do you have to burden me with this? I almost wish I didn't know it.
Rather not know.
But shocking things, I think. Let's see. Okay, so there was. Okay. So 2019, there was Larry Stessel, who worked on marketing campaigns for Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad, and also Triumph and Victory, I believe.
And I brought like a double-page billboard photograph announcing that Michael's Off the Wall had sold 5 million copies or 6 million copies. So I brought him over to a little private area, and I showed him the photograph, and it had the copy on it saying, "Congratulations, Michael, on selling 5 million or 6 million Off the Wall records." And he's looking at it, and he goes, "You retouched that photograph, didn't you?" And I said, "I'm not really sure what you're talking about." So at the very top where his hairline is, he had little baby hair. And the art director had retouched it to give him a cleaner line along his scalp. And I said, "Well, I'm sure we retouched it because it probably looked a little messy, so we just touched it up a little bit." And he goes, "Mm-hmm." He says, "You don't do that to my photos." So I said, "Not a problem. We'll go back to the original photo. I'll tell the art director, and we'll be good to go." This is before cell phones. So I get back to the office, and I walk in, and my secretary says, "You need to call the president of the company right now." So I call up the president of the company, and I said, "Hi, Don, what's up?" He goes, "What did you say to Michael?" I said, "I don't know. I just showed him a bunch of photographs. We had a short conversation, and I left." He goes, "He called the chairman of the record company and told him that he wanted you fired because you told him that he was messy and dirty." And I said, "That did not happen."
He said I apologized to him, and we were fine after that. So that was kind of shocking. There was one with Rob Hoffman in the first year, where he was in the studio with Michael working on the History record, and they had like a TV on in the studio in the corner, and there was a newscast on, and it came up on the screen, newsflash, Michael Jackson filmed here running away with a teenage boy on a plane. Here you can see live footage from the airport of him boarding the plane with a teenage boy. And Rob was like, I looked at the TV, and I looked at Michael sat next to me, And I looked at the TV and I looked at him and I was like, well, how is this live if he's sat here? He said, and Michael just turned to me and said, see what I have to deal with? And it turns out the footage was like Michael and his nephew, and it was maybe a year old or something, but someone had decided to present it as if it was live footage coming to them exclusively.
But this, I think that sums up why these stories are so important, because you never hear that. Like, you never hear people who are actually there with him while he's saying this.
Exactly. And I think, there's so many times where people would suggest that we as fans are kind of overzealous in our approach to, there's this big conspiracy against him, everyone's out to get him, and of course people go, those Jackson fans, they're crazy, they think that there's this big plot, and it's like, but then when you see a situation like that from a person that's got they've got no skin in the game to lie about it, right? So when you've got a person saying, I was watching TV, they're saying it's live and he's sat next to me, how can we not be like, okay, well, they're obviously lying about him?
Yeah.
It's like they're just proving our point, and that's I think is important. There's one from, this was the third Kingvention, Dorian Holly.
I strap my balls over my shoulder and I go, so Michael, we've got this and this to do, and I'm getting a little worried because we don't have much time. And so he never looked at me like this before. This was a look that I think he saves this look for special occasions, and this was one. So he looked at me and he said, you don't need to worry. Okay then, well, thank you. That was a good meeting. I will be Mr. Jackson, thank you so much. I'll see you out on the stage.
Like that gif of Homer going back through the bush. He said, I just felt this, like, do not challenge me on where I should be. And I was like, damn, Michael could lay down the law when he wanted to. And that's another thing, like he could, the stories that we get told, he could be kind of like, the taskmaster. I think when Kevin Dorsey said this year that they'd rehearsed the entire show 2 hours, 26 minutes, and they'd got to like the 2 hour, 24th minute, and somebody hit a wrong lighting cue. And Michael was like, no, from the top. And so they all went to go from the top of Man in the Mirror. And Michael was like, no, the top of the show. We're going from Wannabe Starting Something.
They must have wanted to kill him at times.
It was like, we literally had to get in the lighting tower and drag this guy out.
Something that was shocking to me, it was funny, but it was shocking to me, was when Bill Bottrell said that Michael thinks the harmonica on Streetwalker was country. It's like, did you not want to do Smooth Criminal as a Western?
Right.
And it's like, you're talking about country.
What's the other song? I'm So Blue. Isn't that like right? And that's full of harmonicas, right?
Yes.
And it's like, Michael Hunn, you were mates with Stevie Wonder. Let's cut it. Oh, also, you did like backing vocals for Going Back to Alabama for Kenny Rogers, which is,
he loves a good country moment.
Yeah. And I can imagine Michael bopping to a bit of Jolene or 9 to 5. I think shows my country knowledge is not extensive.
Neither's mine, but I don't. Maybe this is like crazy, but in my head, whatever happens is a wee bit country to me.
Yeah, that's just in your head, I think. I don't know why you're laughing, Ilya.
Ilya's questionable taste strikes again.
Just took over you like I do every single time.
I think something that Dan Beck said. He said that there was a time where, I can't remember the specifics of the conversation, but Dan Beck's dad was unwell and Michael had kind of taken an interest and said, pass on my regards. And
he said, tell me about your father. And it was like, what? And so I started to tell him about my father. And at the time, my father was
declining in health. He had a form of emphysema, but I told him about. He was a blue-collar guy, and, he wasn't a perfect guy, but, I was proud of him, and we talked about it for a while, and talked about his dad a little bit, so anyway, then the pictures arrived, and we did all the pictures, and picked the ones we wanted, and then we got the call that Michael should go to the set. And so I said, well, hey, I'll see you out on the set, I'll give you some time to, do your thing. So I go back to my little trailer. And as I'm going out the door, Michael said, tell your father I said hello. And this was whenever we shot, sometime between, I don't know, August and October of 95. And I went home to, again, the US Thanksgiving holiday. I went back to Pennsylvania where I grew up for Thanksgiving holiday with my family and our new baby, Michaela. And we're there, and I'm in the living room with my father. He's in one of those folding, recliner chairs, and he's not doing great. And so we're sitting there, and I said, "Oh, you know what, Dad?" I said, I was just out in California doing this video shoot with Michael Jackson, and he told me to tell you hello. And my dad looked at me like, wow. There was just no words. And as it turned out, that was the last time I saw my dad. And just to be able to deliver that, and whatever that was, that it came from Michael, that whatever urge he had to tell me that was just an amazing thing. And so that night, to me, it was, pretty spectacular.
I think that story kind of summed up that even though these people had a professional relationship with Michael, he really did take an interest in the people around him.
Yeah.
And not that it's shocking, because I think that's in Michael's nature, but when you consider the amount of people he was around, I think sometimes he seems like a larger-than-life character, and you don't really ever imagine having to take an interest in people that are working for him. And I think all of these stories just show a really nice side of the relationships that they created. Another thing that I remember from this year actually was Kevin Dorsey saying that they were performing in Chile, and they had experienced some racial tension while they were out there. And I just thought that was really important for people to know, because I think because of Michael's vitiligo, he's often forgotten when it comes to conversations about how affected he would have been by racism.
Yeah.
I think it's always important to remember that as a Black man, he experienced that regardless of the vitiligo and everything else.
That really felt for me like this idea of your job is to perform for us. Mm-hmm. We pay you to perform for us, and there was no kind of regard for who they were as people. And that's why they were so quick to kind of switch on the racial abuse at the people when they didn't perform for them, as if they were like performing seals.
Mm-hmm. And that's when I think Kevin had said that they gave the best show when they finally went out there because they were so angry.
Yeah.
And it just, I've actually yet to watch footage from it, but I'd like to go and watch footage from that show to see that, if there's any, that just to see what their performance was like, because he said it was the best show that they did. But I think that was shocking just because, as I said, I think Michael is often forgotten in the conversation when it comes to things to be honest, as he is in a lot of things, a lot of people kind of exclude Michael and dehumanize him often. And I think all of these stories really humanize him.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's why they're so important to have those stories.
This year specifically stood out because the guests, we're used to seeing the guests who have a professional relationship with Michael, who see him when he's at work. You know, they see him in the studio, they see him making music, and that's what they do with him. But this year, I think with Al saw him in his home.
Yeah.
And I think that was such a nice element to, I mean, obviously that was Al's job, but Al saw him at home. And I think to see the contrasts in the way he is at work versus the way he is at home, or for some of them, the way he was on tour, it's so nice to see people who were present in different elements of his life.
So we kind of found a gap where we could make the second day more about focusing on some of those non-creative people that knew him and that were, you know, maybe friends of his or family members, or people like Al, people that worked at Neverland, people that did other things with him. So we think that the Sunday could really be a space for that, which gives it promise.
But I think it was just so nice to hear from a person who saw Michael, you know, in his home, where he was relaxed, where he was doing things that he chose to do in his free time. And I think it was a welcome change to hear from a different side.
And the kind of other good thing about Al is, other than being an amazing person, and he just genuinely is such an incredibly nice person.
The loveliest guy. The nicest man.
He really is.
The only thing that I wanted to say was, like, I just cannot speak highly enough of him. Like, and you could tell, and he had said when we were talking in the Q&A, you could tell how genuinely moved he was by the whole experience. And it was just, I was just so happy to meet him. He was just so lovely.
Another funny story I remember is when we had Jonathan come back the second year, because he did the first year and he came back for the second year. And he said that, you know, whenever he'd take a private jet with Michael, he knew what Michael wanted.
I'm basically in this I'm in this private, you know, bit of the plane with Michael, and I mean, boy, he was so supple, and I mean, you know, the plane's, you know, going up like this, and he's almost like touching the floor, and I'm like, you know, I'm doing my best to get over, and he just loved how terrible I was at it, and just how good he was at it.
But I thought that was so cool, like that even his own gimmicks, he's like on a plane and like, let me do that now.
Oh, do you know another thing that I've just remembered from this year when Lavelle was talking about the Soul Train Awards, and as soon as they were mentioned, he went, oh. To end this conversation on the kind of spirit of Kingvention and what it's really about, how would you say that being at the forefront of this event and impacting people in the way that you have has had a personal impact on your life?
I think what it did for me personally is that when Michael passed away, like if something happens, right? If something happens in your life and you know that you can go and, like, if something happens at work and you can go and speak to the boss about it, or you can go to HR about it, or if something happens when you're in the street and you can go and complain to the police about it, or whatever, you know, when a situation happens and you feel that you kind of take back control of that situation by doing something active about it. When Michael passed away, it was the first time I'd ever felt this kind of, it doesn't matter who I have a go at, who I ask questions to, who I try and fight, he's never coming back, and, you know, he's not going to do the tour. And I just felt such a sense of like loss that I couldn't do anything about. And Kingvention really for me has been that feeling of being able to do something about that and put something positive and take control of a situation and put something positive about, because, you know, we all want to see Michael's legacy thrive. We all want to see his name in lights. We all want to see him do well. And I take, I take great pleasure in the fact that we get to be a tiny, tiny part of somebody else's fan journey and making them feel important for that day and making them feel special and making them feel included. And that will always mean so much to me, to be able to help be a part of making that happen for somebody. So, and I would say, that's where I get my fulfillment. Often in a lot of areas of my life, I get my fulfillment from Kingvention, from knowing that someone else has had a great day because of something you've done. And all those hours spent and all those shitty comments that 3 or 4 people with 12 Twitter accounts, post, it doesn't actually mean anything when you look at how much someone's had a great time, or someone comes up to you at the end and goes, "I've had the best day ever. Thank you so much." That is thanks enough. So yeah, that's the sort of personal impact it has on me. The impact it's had on my house is that it's like it's like a bomb's hit it at the moment. If you were to look around this room, everything is obscured that way. But it's that's the sort of impact it's had. And obviously I met you guys through it. I met you guys and I met our little group, and we'd have never met without that event. So that's changed my life significantly, because I have you guys as friends, which we wouldn't have maybe never met if we hadn't done this event and said, yes, it's happening.
I really don't know how to answer that question, but every time we're there, like I'm a part of team, and then you got to be there as well, Charlotte, this year. Like, so we do this like little dinner thing. So the guests meet the team members, and I said this there, and I said the same thing last time as well. I'm just sitting in front of people that work with Michael, and they've been on stage with Michael, and I get to sit down and have a meal with them and talk to them like they're my best friends. So it's surreal, and it's absolutely incredible. Like I can never ever, I would never imagine that I would be in these people's presence, and I would be taught by LaVille Smith, or what's the name?
Eddie Garcia.
Eddie Garcia. It's crazy. So it's beyond everything. This is the closest I can get to Michael. So as fans, we all know what that means.
That's exactly how I would say for me as well. Like, I was very young when Michael died. I was only 11. And for me, Kingvention is the closest I will ever get to him, or kind of being around him. And as you mentioned, Pez, like, it's amazing that I now have friends who I consider my best friends, who have shaped and molded my life in a way that I wouldn't have known these people without this event. And obviously, of course, like, being around people that have worked with Michael, like dancers and singers and all of the people over the years who you've grown up watching when you're watching these tours and stuff. It's just the most unbelievable feeling. And one thing that the guests have always said that stuck with me is that, and you've said it as well, Pez, obviously from meeting Michael yourself, that you could feel him before you could see him. It was like he had an atmosphere and a presence that you could feel before Michael appeared. And I think probably for me, Kingvention to me feels like Michael could walk in the door at any minute. It's the closest I think I will feel to his spirit probably in my life. And that means more to me than anything.
It's so weird because we've never seen Michael in person, me and Charlotte. So, and these people, the guests, are imprinted in our brains. Like, that's I feel like I know these people. But as Michael's not real to us, I mean, to me, seeing these people in real life make Michael more real. You know what I mean? I feel like if I'm seeing this person that's always next to Michael on those videos, then Michael could be here. So it makes it feel really special.
It's hard to explain to someone who's never been there, and it might sound silly because obviously we know he can't just
walk in the course.
But it really honestly does feel like that, and I know that a lot of people share those feelings when they're there. So you're onto something with it, and your hard work.
And of course it changed off. And of course it changed our lives. Like, we met each other. Like, I have my lifelong friends, like my best friends. There we are. So hey,
I do just want to say to round off, sorry, that I know that you and Seb absolutely hate praise, and you're not very good at taking it. But I just want to say, like, and I know that I speak on behalf of everyone who attends, that we, like, me, Elia, Chloe, Connie, and everyone else who comes here, like, we have so much pride and appreciation for everything that you two have done, and I just need you to know that.
That's really kind. I mean, you know, we used to have a praise absorber on our team that would absorb all the praise, which meant that we didn't have to. But obviously, now that's no longer the case. It just, yeah, it's embarrassing.
Well, thank you very much for answering our questions, and we hope that Kingvention is back very soon.
What you'll often find is that when guests say things at different years, stories will match, and these people have never met each other. So a photographer might say something about, when we was on the bad tour, this happened, and a dancer will say, when we was on the bad tour, this happened, but they never actually met each other, but their stories are the same. Yeah. And what I love about that is that paints a real picture of who Michael was, because you get to see it from different sides, but the result is the same. And so, you know, sort of coming back to your first question is, how would I describe Kingvention to someone who's never been? It's like, if you really want to get to know Michael from those who knew him, that's the place to be.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It would mean a lot to us. And share. What am I saying at the end?
Follow us on Instagram and Twitter too.
Oh, yeah. We will leave all our social media links down below in the description. And that is it.